Welcome to the Uncommon Man podcast, where we help men shift their mindset, crush burnout, and become the best fathers, husbands, and leaders they can be via our programs and coaching. On this podcast, you will find out why traditional and common approaches don't go after the real problems when it comes to burnout, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to health and building wealth. We will walk you through examples, tools, and skills that you can develop and resources that we can give you that will help you build a better life in your health, wealth, and relationships. Today, men, we are going to talk about burnout. Do you have it? How do you avoid it? How do you eliminate it if you already have it? What are the common traits or common things that we use that don't work, and why burnout is such a absolute bastard when it comes to stopping us getting the things that we want and living an uncommon life. We're going to walk you through some tools and some skills that you can develop in order to avoid burnout, eliminate if you already have it, and understand what are the warning signs that are saying to you and alerting you, saying, hey, this shit's going to happen to you, or you're already in it right now, and why some of the approaches that you're possibly already doing or have been shown don't actually work. So today, enjoy the conversation, guys. At the end, like always, we will give you all the tools and all the skills that you can use to eliminate burnout from your life or avoid it entirely. So let's rip in. Nick, what is burnout? Like, what is it to you? What have you seen in your clients that sort of says, look, this is approaching, or you're in the depths of it now?
So the definition that I understand burnout as is it's characterized by a state of chronic stress that leads to physical and emotional exhaustion, some form of cynicism, even detachment. And it's just this, you have this general feeling of just feeling really ineffective. And you always have this sense of like you're not accomplishing anything. So whatever you're doing, you just don't feel accomplished. And I actually wrote this down because this is a conversation I had probably like 2 weeks ago with one of my clients. And there are three common components that tend to arise within burnout. One being emotional exhaustion, which is feeling drained, fatigued, unable to cope, just generally tired, lacking energy. The next one would be depersonalization. So this is you developing a cynical attitude towards work, towards the people around you, and just feeling very detached and isolated. And the last one, which affects a lot of our high-performing men in our community, is just this decreased sense of accomplishment. So this overall feeling of I'm ineffective, I'm unable to be productive, and just the sense that your efforts aren't actually moving the needle and making a difference with whatever endeavor you're busy progressing with.
I think, yeah, you've hit a lot of nails on the head there. I want to add one thing. Have you noticed in your clients that are heading towards burnout or are in it, that they've lost joy for the things that used to bring them joy?
Oh, totally. And I think that ties into that depersonalization.
Yeah.
You're so detached from everything. Nothing has feeling or meaning because you're so isolated from it. It's like this glass wall that you're observing your life from because you're just not there. It's just like, oh, that's happening, but you're not there to actually experience it.
What about you, Harry? What have you experienced in your own life and in your coaching career, like with your clients?
So the way that I've experienced it is it's like at first you're putting the same amount of effort in, but you're getting less out, like both from terms of like results and also like, as you just mentioned, in terms of joy. Like it starts to feel a lot more mechanical, like you're going through the motions. And then like most of our high performers would resonate with this of like, okay, well, I'm getting less out, so I need to put more in. So you burn the candle even harder. You get up that little bit earlier, you stay up that little bit later, you take more caffeine, stimulants, pre-workouts, all that kind of stuff. And then, if you're in the gym, oh, I'm tired, I'll just have an extra scoop of pre-workout or have an extra, coffee, whatever it is. And, don't be a bitch and take a day off, just lift even harder. And so, you start to notice your performance starts to go down, and then you're more likely to get injured. That's where a lot of people end up with strains and sprains and stuff like that, because they're so tight. They're trying to push for more than they can, I guess, really achieve at that point. And you get to that point where either you take a break because you figure out what's happening, or your body forces you to take a break in the form of injury or some other form of health breakdown, and you get forced to taking some time off. Right.
I think one of the key things you've mentioned there, and the things that I see is one of the warning signs when I'm coaching somebody. They're like, maybe I need to change my morning routine. Like maybe I need to change this. Maybe I'm like, hang on, mate. All of this stuff has been working well so far. Why is it suddenly that you need to change this? And it's this thing of like, well, I need to work harder. I need to become more efficient. I need to put more stuff in. Like it's not working like it used to, or it's not getting to where I want fast enough. And I'm like, okay, mate, that to me is the flint before the spark of the burnout, that it really kicks off.
I think a lot of people will then also go that next step and say, I just need more time, right? It's not because you need more time. It's because you're being less effective with your time. So you think you need more time, but you just need to be more effective with your time. Like I know, like my old trait, whenever I had a lot on my plate, would be get up early, have more stimulants, and just get it done. I'd sacrifice sleep to get shit done instead of looking at, well, how do I be more effective in the other hours of my day so that I don't have to compromise the one thing that actually allows me to sustain those level of efforts, both physical, mental, emotional, like all that stuff, and then end up cooking yourself even more.
And I hope the guys listening are kind of figuring out, like, these are the symptoms. Like, these are the things that are showing up for you that are giving you a good indication of you're either in burnout right now or you're heading towards it. From your point of view, and to help people get clarity, Nick, can you give some ideas of like how does burnout show up in terms of its impact in your life, whether that be in your health, whether that be in your wealth, whether that's in your relationship? Right. How does that impact it? What is it showing up like?
So I'm gonna break this into two areas just so guys can really understand this. So just giving you the general symptoms that is seen as a common sign of burnout. So insomnia, overall chronic fatigue, forgetfulness, difficulty in concentrating, increased illness, loss of appetite, anxiety, depression, anger and irritability, reduced performance and productivity. So those are your normal symptoms of burnout. But just to, bring this into the context of your life, here's a couple of questions where you can actually self-assess as well. So here's a checklist that you can run through and go through this as I'm busy asking the question. So do you feel tired and drained most of the time? Do you find it hard to concentrate? Are you experiencing physical symptoms such as headaches or stomach issues? Do you feel detached or alone in the world? Are you using food, drugs, stimulants, or alcohol to feel better or to simply not feel? Do you feel ineffective and like you're not achieving anything? If you said yes to any of that, and if you said yes to more than, let's say, 2 or 3 of those symptoms, then I'd say you're in the bracket of burnout. And it's worthwhile, starting to look at some of the strategies that you are using, like Harry mentioned, and seeing, well, what's ineffective and what actually isn't serving me at this moment in time.
I guess for a lot of us, and I've been there as well, like sometimes I need a really good poker, like a hot stick to make me move. And that comes in the form of like the impact that's going on in my life. Like how is the things that are showing up, whether it's my relationship, whether it's my health. For the guys that you've been coaching and maybe some experiences yourself, like what have been the impacts that you've seen from burnout?
The first thing that comes up, honestly, is apathy. Guys are just really apathetic. They're unable to show up. There's always this underlying lack of presence in their lives, and they don't know what it is, because on paper, You're ticking all the boxes all the time. You're doing everything. Like you're being the great father. You are, still making time for the missus. You are showing up in your business. You're waking up early. You've got a morning routine. You've got all these things. But why do I still feel this way? Why am I unable to like bridge this gap? And I think that once you've maybe given this a label and you're like, oh wow, this sounds like me, and I'm not one for labels, but in this case, just for context, once you've got that label and you can say, well, this is what I'm experiencing, I find that in conversation, most of these guys are like, well, okay, great, so this is what I'm experiencing now, what do I do about it? And burnout is a process. When you're busy healing it and you're navigating it and you're changing your strategies, your entire neurology, or like your neurobiological system has to make a shift, because this has affected you on a nervous system level. And this takes time. And it's kind of like you're so accustomed to a certain level of productivity that anything less than that doesn't feel like work. Like you're so stuck in that pattern. That feels like you're normal. So if you're not doing normal, then something is wrong. And then you look for something to create that level of stress and angst in your system again. Oh, it's normal. So then you'll find that when you are busy helping people navigate that, their anxiety starts to rise as well whilst they're in the process, because their body the system is trying to recalibrate back to what it knows. So it starts to future pace all the time. And it's such a subtle game, but it's a whole process of deconditioning from just, realizing that you're not present, you're not being productive because you're just heightened all the time and you have never learned how to come down to a normal state.
I like that idea of like deconditioning, right? And Harry, I'd like your insights into kind of what is in society, like what is it that we do or has become normal that conditions us to live this life towards burnout? What do you see as this acceptance or even badges that people wear that lead us down this path?
I think it used to be coined as that hustle culture or that grind mentality, like that high emphasis on work ethic, right? And trying to work hard, outwork, I guess, in terms of hours is where I think a lot of people go. And like, definitely, I used to be in this boat, so I'm not talking about this from like some higher place, right? So in terms of you try to outwork people in terms of like hours and input. But then when you look at people that get the most output, they try to put the least in to get the most out. And so by focusing on how much can I put in, working longer hours, grinding as much as possible, working yourself to the bone. And I definitely used to be in that place. Like I didn't have any regard for sleep. I would wake up same time every day. Didn't matter what time I went to sleep. Didn't matter how I went to, like how I slept at all, how I felt. Double scoop of pre-workout, straight to the gym, train for 2 hours, then go about my 10, 12-hour workday in the kitchens, stuff like that. And no wonder I was having seizures every couple of months, right? And so eventually you get to a point where you can't keep doing that. And having that, I guess, that experience, maybe that level of knowledge, maturity, that guidance to say, being able to maintain that level of output, you need to put something back in terms of like putting something back into your recovery. Like if you want to have high levels of output, awesome. But you need to have enough going back in terms of the right nutrition, in terms of managing your mental health, in terms of your sleep, in terms of your nervous system, all that good stuff, so that you can sustain those high levels of output, because you can't keep taking without putting something back in. Eventually you will die or develop a drug addiction or something else in terms of trying to maintain that, but you just won't be able to, because your performance will go down, despite you putting all those hours in. And so if you can start to measure your results rather than the effort you put in, I think it can help people to then take a smarter look at what's actually improving their performance and what they're getting out, as opposed to sheerly focusing on, well, how can I put more hours and energy into this, and just burning themselves out.
Mate, it's so classic. And I've been caught up in that dick measuring competition of like, oh, I did 80 hours this week. You only did 70. Like, oh, you got the big title of CEO, so you must be hardworking. You must always be working lots. And I even find it interesting today where somebody will say, you know, how's work, how's things going? And there's still this unconscious thing that wants to say, oh, it's busy, you know, like working hard. And I'm like, I really want to wear the badge of like, sweet, yeah, I barely work any hours. I get massive results. My clients are super happy. Like life is fucking awesome. And I just hear this unconscious projection that this person is judging me because I'm not busy and I'm not working as many hours as them. I must not be as good enough as a man because I'm not hitting the hourly mark anymore. And I'm like, how conditioned is that from my childhood or wherever it's come from society? And I had a really awesome client, a builder actually. And one of the things that he inherited from his father was like, you're a hard worker. Being a hard worker is where you are valued as a man. And so he works his ass off. And I asked him one day, I said, okay, cool. Would you rather be known as the builder who grinds and works really, really hard? Or would you be rather known as the builder who does an excellent job and finishes things off well? And he just goes, fuck, I'd way rather be known as the builder who does a great job and finishes things off really well. Like be known as that guy who just has the finishing touch, the Midas touch, rather than the guy who's like, oh yeah, you know, he's always there. He's there hours upon hours. He's the first one there, the last one to leave. He's such a hard worker. But it's really, really hard to deprogram that. Really, really hard to decondition it.
Well, another way you can look at that, which I think will humble some people, is if that's like the way that where you hold your pride of like having to work that hours, like a flip on that would be, wow, you must be very ineffective if it takes you that long.
Right. Ouch, hey, that's a fucking burn.
And you're like, oh, I didn't look at it that way. I thought hours was related to like, you know, growth and like how hard I am. But like if it's related to like ineffectiveness, like, bro, that job should take you like an hour. Why is it taking you 8? Like,
I want to touch on something that is one of my current beliefs around burnout and where it comes from. And I'm really interested on your guys' take for this. And like, I look at people who achieve great things, and a lot of them, I use the push and pull analogy. So you look at athletes at the top of their game and they're winning still and they're doing all these things, but for some reason they still feel unhappy and they're being pushed there because they are like, I'm not enough. You know, I need to be better for my dad. I want recognition. I want this because something is not enough in them. And then there's the people who get pulled. Now, not everybody who gets pushed experiences burnout, but I believe everybody who's experiencing burnout suffers with an element of self-worth. And burning out doesn't just happen to business owners. It happens to employees. It happens to a lot of people. And what I am seeing is the whole, well, I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. So I've got to prove myself. So I need to work more. I need to produce more for my boss who I look up to, my dad who doesn't think I'm worthy enough yet. And so we have this internal system or core wound, call it, of not being enough. So we just keep push. We keep push. It's that whole idea of like work harder when I didn't even think about how inefficient I'm being. What's your guys' opinion on that, of it being connected to self-worth?
For sure. Like that whole nice guy syndrome of, if I provide this amount of money for my family, if I do this good a job at work, if I do this thing, then someone will like me, someone will love me, value me, whatever else it is. And there's that attachment to that outcome, as opposed to people just being able to like me for maybe who I am, as opposed to the job I do or what I provide for people. So a question I ask a few of my guys that kind of are in that position where they don't really know if the relationships in their life, not just romantic, but in terms of like friendships and things like that, are ones that serve them. The question I ask them is, do you think that they love you for who you are or for what you do for them? Because if someone just likes you for what you do for them, because you're a convenience in their life, because you provide something, whether it's just a drinking buddy or you're the guy that brings the trailer when you go camping, or whatever it is, then maybe that friendship isn't one to take you where you want to go in life, right? That's one perspective.
It's a bloody good one to look at, but a hard one to look at. What are your thoughts on it, Nick?
I actually think I think you hit the nail on the head there, but I'd also add in the whole mechanic of people pleasing, because most of these people that are experiencing this, they are looking to be validated and affirmed by everyone else around them all the time. And yes, it ties into like that whole success strategy that they have, or sense of achievement or sense of value. So they're living from the outside in versus the inside out. And it is a scary place to be in, because you're unable to say no, because you also don't have boundaries, because you don't see yourself as someone who is, valuable enough to actually set a precedent, a standard, and a boundary, and say, look, like, I can't do that. I'm not going to work overtime today, or I've done a self-assessment on myself in this moment, and the work that I'm going to do, like you said, Harry, is going to be ineffective. Is it going to help me to show up with like a 1 out of 10 and get this done and take like 5 hours? Or if I rest and go do something else and fill up my cup and restore and, do something that, inspires me and excites me, and come back to this a few hours later or tomorrow, the world isn't going to end. And I'd probably do a way more effective job, because I've given myself that little bit of reprieve. And the only person I was pleasing there was me, not anyone else. Because I think there's also like this dire consequence that's built in. Like you said, if there's trauma involved in conditioning, the world feels like it's going to end if you don't get done with that thing. And this is what makes high performers and people that achieve these heights. They have something broken in them. It is broken. Like, I battle with this every single day. Like, I have to set all these little boundaries for myself. There's a list in my office that I look at. It's like, you can take a break now. Why should I take a break? Well,
but it's also those connections that we also have with those habits as well, right? It's not just with being hardworking, but or if I take a day off, then if I don't go to the gym, that's going to make me fat. This makes me lazy. If I don't do this, then that makes me that type of person. And I'm doing my utmost to not be that person. And so even though it's a day, even though it might be the best thing for us at that point, we have that connection of, oh, that makes me lazy. That makes me unsuccessful. Yes. That makes me whatever other negative label we've associated with it too.
But then the question becomes bigger, because then it's, well, am I just living out this fucking to-do list, an ideal identity all the time to please society in this frame that I've created of myself? I have to, because then it becomes, it's perfectionism. Like, I have to be perfect. I can't drop the ball. Like, I think, like, speaking as a person that facilitates these conversations with other people, you feel like if I drop the ball, if I give myself a moment, then I'm not going to be at my best when I show up in these conversations. How can I tell that person to show up and do that if I haven't done that, if I took a break, if I did this? And then it's imposter syndrome. So everything can start dancing from perfectionism to people pleasing into imposter syndrome. And it's a beautiful cycle that all of us experience in some way, shape, or form. But the difference is, how do you facilitate that internal dialogue? And that's where the self-awareness comes in, and the practice and the compassion with yourself.
And this is where I want to go. I want to give the guy something that they can be like, okay, fucking hell, this is me to a T. Like, what do I do about it? What do I need to understand? How do I start making the shifts? And I think, like, not sort of blowing smoke up our own asses here, but we do a really, really good job of this over at the Uncommon Man. Like, we do an amazing job of helping guys through this process. And I think one of the things, or the reasons why, is we have a unique mechanism for it that just seems to, well, one, it's simple. One, it's very, very simple. It's smart. It's effective. And it's against the common approach to how most of society does it. So, like, from a more scientific approach or understanding, like, Harry, could you give the guys listening an understanding of what's going on for them, maybe from a more biological point of view, but also what they can do to help with this, to eliminate it, to avoid it? Like, what is the starting place?
So if you're looking at like symptoms and stuff, I guess what's happening when you start to experience this stuff, like your nervous system is getting fried. Your, I guess, cortisol is, I guess, staying high for so long if you're stressed, which is going to cause like over time a decrease in your testosterone, which is then going to have all those symptoms that we have with low test in terms of like high susceptibility, lower threshold to stress. So you experience high amounts of stress from smaller amounts of stress. You under recover. You don't have that drive, that vigor, that energy for life, for sex, for challenge, for any of those stuff that we do when we have higher amounts of testosterone. So it creates all those kind of issues. When you're looking at, like, if you, a good way to actually test how well your nervous system is primed really is when you wake up in the morning. If you go to the gym, a good thing to do is go straight to the rig, like the squat rack, and do a dead hang. If you can hang, we've all had those moments where we've tried to do a chin up or a deadlift first thing, and then some days you'll feel strong as your grip strength. You're like, I can hold this for days. Like I can hold anything, bare grip, no worries. Other days you'll lift up same weight and you're like, fuck, I can barely hold it. My fingers are uncurling after a few seconds. If you do that dead hang and you've got that grip strength and you feel like you can hang there for ages, that is a good sign that your nervous system is well recovered, because you're able to send strong signals from your brain through your system to your outer limbs to contract your muscles effectively. If you have a weak grip strength and you can't hold onto the bar for very long and it feels noticeably weaker, you don't have a very good signal in sending that ability to contract your motor neurons, so your nervous system is not very well recovered. That's a good practical way of assessing how well your nervous system is recovered if you don't have, Aura rings, whoop straps and stuff like that. So then based on that feedback, you can then decide how heavy you lift in your session, but then also for the rest of your day, how much time you spend hustling and grinding and going hard versus maybe finding a little bit more time to give back to yourself, maybe have a nap or some NSDR, put a bit more emphasis on, rejuvenation, on getting your sleep fixed and things like that, so that you can actually start to correct that, so that you can perform better and like get that output back up and fix yourself, rather than just keep grinding yourself into the dirt. That makes sense.
It does make sense. And I guess it's such a key point of what we use with our guys with the pyramid of performance. Like that dives into giving an idea of like, cool, that is at the base, get that nervous system fixed and understanding whether it's jacked or not. From like an unconscious, almost trauma point of view, Nick, what are some of the things that guys might want to be working on that might have a deeper level of awareness? So they're like, okay, cool, I'm kind of aware of my nervous system, but I'm still not quite getting to where I want fast enough, or I'm not seeing the results. Like, what are some of the plays that are happening on and in the unconscious, and what are some of the things that they can do about it?
I think if you've got a fair understanding of your nervous system, it'll be easier for you to maybe look and see if you're in fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. So just see where you're sitting within those spaces. And sometimes it's a hybrid response, like you're in a freeze, fawn response. You can actually just go and look that up on Google, even Pinterest, and just look at the different symptoms of being in those different responses. But from a subconscious level, if we go back to the whole idea of people pleasing, you're seeking validation for what you're doing. So imagine that you're a kid, mom and dad's there. And I'll give you an example. Like my child just brought me his spelling test that he got full marks for. He's really proud of it. And in that case, he didn't bring it to me to say like, oh, like, please validate me. He just dropped it off like, yeah, it is. And the vast difference between me saying like, I'm proud of you for doing that versus I'm proud of myself for doing this, and here I'm just going to show you what I've done for myself. That's the key mechanic that you need to start looking at. Are you proud of yourself for having done X, Y, and Z, or are you seeking someone else to say, I'm proud of you? And start looking at that. Like, you finished your work. Do you want someone to see, or do you compare yourself to someone else all the time? Or is it, I'm really proud of myself for having, put so much care, focus, and intention into what I've been doing, be it working on my body, working in my business, working on my relationships, spending time with my kids. That could be a really good practice. So is this for me or is this for them? And then how do you flip that back to me? The next thing, which is very simple, but it's probably going to be the hardest practice here, is learn to say no. If you're not feeling capable, if you feel that you're at your threshold, if you do not have energy, let's say you've done the test like Harry just mentioned, you hung there, you're feeling like a 2 out of 10. Maybe instead of doing the hour and a half workout you had planned, stretch, recuperate, breathe. Go do some NSDR. But then also when someone says, hey, can we work late? Or let me go grab a beer, or let me go do that. You know what, guys, not going to work today. Just don't feel it. Learn to say no, because then you are prioritizing yourself. So that pyramid that people normally struggle with, especially men, we feel like we have to be the base of this thing and everyone else is on top of us. We've got it fucking wrong. You've got to invert that. You've got to be at the top, because if you're not full and overflowing, you can't pour into your kids. You can't pour into your wife. You can't pour into your business. You can't pour into the people that want the best of you, and you want to share the best of yourself. And that starts with boundaries and self-worth. So
I love that. Yeah, it's cool. Is there any other key factors you guys think would be helpful for our guys that you want to share?
One thing I'd like to add, and then this is from my personal experience recently. So as you guys know, I started doing face-to-face group coaching at the Yard recently. So I've managed to pull another 27 hours of work out of my ass, which I didn't really have, right? But, getting up 3:45, 5 mornings a week now, and, coaching that face-to-face most days, especially when I ride to the gym, I'm clocking up over 23,000 steps. So there's a whole lot more activity in what I'm doing on top of everything else. And I think one thing that can also be helpful in you guys checking yourself in this burnout phase, or either preventing it as well, is also knowing your values as well. So for me, health is my number one value. Not only do I get to do more of that based on the extra steps, the riding to work, doing all that kind of stuff, I also get to be in a gym, help other people work on their health and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's and also the coaching element, the helping other people be their best, all that good stuff, that's very aligned with myself and what I want to do. And so when you are in alignment with your values, with your purpose and all that kind of stuff, I firmly believe you have a much higher threshold to burnout, to fatigue, because call it whatever you want. Maybe you've got a greater mission, you've got whatever else it is, but if you're misaligned with those values, you're doing something that compromises those, I believe that you will burn out a hell of a lot faster.
Yeah.
So
I think you've absolutely nailed that. And that was the piece that I talked about, push versus pull. You have a very, very strong pull, and seldom do people make it to the top with the pull. But the people who do make it to the top with the pull have a satisfaction like no other. They get there and it's amazing. It feels fantastic. Rather than the people who get there with a push, they get there and they're completely unsatiated. And they live that life, that cycle of more, but it doesn't make me feel better. More, but it doesn't, what is this thing that I get to? And I think one of the most important pieces of the puzzle when we talk to our guys, and the very, very first thing we do with all our guys is find that pull. We call that the summit, and finding those values. So many guys don't have strict values on what happiness means to them. And so the pull is impossible to find for them. So they are pushed through their entire life, and they wonder why they can never achieve the great things, or they wonder why there isn't the joy in their life anymore. Like you're experiencing now, it's working 70 hours a week for something that you absolutely fucking love does not feel like work. As the saying goes, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And I challenge those people who might say, well, you can't do something you love and make money from it. I'm like, there's someone right here to disprove that right now.
Even to your earlier point in terms of people pleasing, if you've been pushed your whole life doing things that maybe don't align with you or that you don't want to do, that's because you haven't set boundaries as to what you haven't made up your mind what you do want to do.
Yeah.
So making up your mind, setting in some boundaries, or figuring out what you do want to do in life could maybe help you realign yourself so that you don't have to do crazy hours, but whatever you are doing feels more enjoyable and you don't push yourself into that burnout phase.
I love it. I love it. Look, for those guys listening, I hope this has been really helpful for you. Nick and Harry, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your time. For those guys who want to dive into things and actually have a step-by-step process that pulls them through these scenarios, puts them in a position where they can reach their summit, we have something called the Uncommon Protocol. And we made it so it's literally a coffee a day. That's the price that we made it for guys. So they can get in, they can get some accountability, they can get the exact process and steps that walks them through it. So it consolidates it all into one nice, easy place. If you want that, come join our community. You can build on it, you can develop trust, you can see what's going on. And for those guys that want to get to their summit faster, we have one-on-one coaching. Yes, it's limited spaces and it's just for those guys who want to absolutely rapido their progressions toward their summits, but it's there. I'll put the link in the description of this. You guys can come join our community on School or on Facebook. It's all there for you. Thanks again, Harry and Nick, for your time. Please, if this has been helpful for you, share it. We are all about stronger men, strong communities. Thank you for listening, guys. Big love to you.